Welcome back. I'm Nadia Jani, and we're coming to you directly from an historical live broadcast from Washington, D.C., where a pivotal moment for the South Caucasus has just unfolded. US President Donald Trump hosted back-to-back meetings with leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia in a historic bid to secure peace in the region. After several historic days of high-level diplomacy, President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, is now set to speak with a select group of journalists at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, offering insight into the outcomes of this landmark summit. Among those present is AnewZ Washington correspondent Obey Shambandar, who will be participating in the exclusive media encounter. Here in the studio with me right now is Orkan Amashov, the Deputy Editor-in-Chief of AnewZ, who will be helping us follow and unpack the developments as they unfold. Welcome, Orkan.
Thank you, Nadia.
Orkan, we've seen something so monumentous this morning. And I just wanted to kind of talk about that in more detail. We saw President Aliyev, we saw the Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, and obviously US President Donald Trump. How significant is what we just saw with the signing?
It's massively significant. It's although as President Aliyev mentioned this whilst replying to the question posed by, if memory serves correctly, Armenian journalists, that it may not be a legally binding peace treaty. It's not a peace agreement on peace and establishment of interstate relations. It's so significant that we could say that it's a beginning of a new era in the history of the region. I think that's I don't think we are overestimating the scale of what has happened when we use this kind of language and we use this we apply these attributes to the scale of what has happened. President Aliyev, while responding to one of the questions, he said that the fact that this joint declaration is being signed here in Washington, the world's...
I just need to interrupt you just a moment. I think we're going to go live now.
Fantastic.
I think we've got the exclusive interview with President Ilham Aliyev, which our correspondent Obey Shabahan will be talking to him. Okay, no, we're going to continue. Sorry about that. We're going to come back to that in a moment. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so I was talking about the importance.
So the importance of the two agreements coming together. And I was just going to actually pinpoint the use of Trump being the main mediator in this and how praiseworthy the two leaders were.
Yeah, indeed, they were quite praiseworthy, and rightly so, because all has been attained is absolutely colossal. Process is bilateral, as I mentioned earlier, but it looks like we're about to begin the interview, Nadia.
Okay, we are now going to the interview now with President Aliyev and our news reporter correspondent Obey. And Orkan, you're going to be translating some of what those questions will be asked to President Aliyev.
Strateji tərəfdaşlıq xartiyasını hazırlamaq üçün strateji İşçi grup da yaratılmıştır.
Strategic Partnership Agreement, Strategic Working Group was established.
Burada gelecek əməkdaşlıq istiqamətləri
yes, in the context of the cooperation, a lot has been done.
Bunlar qarşılıqlı sərmayə qoyulur.
It involves a large range of issues that are going between these two countries, between US and Azerbaijan. President Aliyev currently talking about that bilateral agenda between Azerbaijan and US, about artificial intelligence, investment, and also defense cooperation, which is, as you know, going to be another, because we talked about the three fundamental areas: connectivity, energy, transit, defense cooperation, and also artificial intelligence, digital infrastructure. And President Aliyev currently effectively explaining the gist of that strategic partnership agreement which is currently being elaborated between Azerbaijan and the US. So what happened actually, we signed a memorandum of understanding on the establishment of strategic working group, which will be developing that strategic partnership charter. President Aliyev explaining the gist of that. Yeah, and also President Aliyev talking about the meetings that he held in the United States, bilateral meetings with different US companies, and about the investments that will be coming to Azerbaijan as a result of the agreements attained there, as a result of those bilateral negotiations. And also President Aliyev talking about now some problems that Azerbaijan had with the Biden administration.
bizim Amerika Birleşmiş Ştatları ile evvelki
Yeah.
dönemde
So some of the agreements that were attained between Azerbaijan and the Biden administration and some of the potentiality emanating from those negotiations were not properly utilized.
Ona göre indi biz vaxt itirebilmeliyiz.
And President Aliyev is saying that we lost some time. He's saying that relations between Azerbaijan and the Biden administration back then were not really that good. Many opportunities were lost. Now we cannot allow ourselves any prospect of losing time because we need to act decisively. Yep.
Bu hoş münasibət əlbəttə ki, çox önəmli bir amil.
And the fact that now good relationship between the two countries seems to have been established, the importance of this meeting is indeed incredibly important. And he's saying that it's the first meeting between President Trump and Aliyev after his, of course, re-election.
Azərbaycanla bağlı olan bilgilər sözün düzü məni təəccübləndirdi.
And very interesting, President Aliyev was certainly saying that the knowledge of President Trump about Azerbaijan surprised him. So it looks like President Trump is a man of knowledge when it comes to Azerbaijan. President Aliyev was surprised by the scale of that knowledge.
Azərbaycanın Amerika Birləşmiş Ştatlarına həmişə dost ölkə olmasını cənab Trump çox yaxşı bilir.
And he's saying that President Trump, of course, knows very well that Azerbaijan has always had very friendly approach towards the United States, fundamentally speaking. And now he's extensively talking about what has been attained in the past and what is likely to come. And effectively, President Aliyev looking at the wider picture, which we could describe as a strategic partnership between these two countries. And he is expressing his satisfaction with what has been attained, and he's hoping that the results emanating from this meeting will soon materialize and will manifest itself in a crystal clear way.
Quite a day. History in the making. You and Prime Minister Pashinyan saying that you're going to issue a joint declaration to the Nobel Prize Committee. We heard President Trump praise your vision and your leadership, and you likewise praising President Trump's visionary leadership that led to this agreement today. As you know, with President Trump, personal relations are very important. Mm-hmm. How would you rate your leadership to leadership, or even personal relations between you and President Trump? And how important was it to you to see President Trump waive that Section 907 law that was passed by Congress decades ago that had prevented American aid to Azerbaijan? Is this a new moment for Azerbaijan and the United States?
Exactly. I'm sure that we are opening the new chapter in our relationship. And with President Trump, our personal contact, it was the first meeting between us, was very friendly, cordial, and result-oriented. Of course, I knew President Trump from his previous term and from what he have been accomplishing in these 6 months. President Trump didn't know who am I. Of course, he heard about me through his team members. But of course, my personal attitude to President Trump always was very positive. And even last year, in the middle of last year, when I was asked about elections in the United States, I said what I thought. I said that we support him because he is probably the only American president who did not start wars. And this is true. And he is a person who values family values like Azerbaijani people. And of course, during these 6 months in office, as I said today at the press conference, he did things which seem to be impossible. In Africa, in Asia, in Southern Caucasus, the person brings peace and brings tangible results. So from this point of view, I highly value our personal relationship, and I'm sure in the coming years, this personal relationship will influence largely interstate relations between our countries. And of course, issuing a waiver, signing a waiver to this unjust 907 Amendment to Freedom Support Act in Oval Office in my presence has a very symbolic meaning. He could have done it in other form. He could have signed that later, but he decided to do it in front of President of Azerbaijan, the country, which have been unjustly sanctioned by Congress back in 1992, in October 1992. And at that time, of course, members of Congress, they were not aware about Azerbaijan, about what was happening in the Southern Caucasus. And through Armenian lobbying groups, they've been influenced. And the victim, Azerbaijan, was presented as an aggressor. So that amendment deprived us from a direct American assistance, which we needed badly at that time. At that time, Azerbaijan was a poor country with many refugees and with a ruined economy. So we were the only former Soviet Union republic which had been under sanctions. Then, as you know, in 2001, these sanctions have been waived because the United States government needed Azerbaijan's assistance in Afghanistan, and we provided a very important transportation connection network, which was called Northern Distribution Network. It was not only overflights, but it was also land and maritime transportation. And every year, American presidents were issuing that waiver until 2023. And that was a big shock for us because we did not expect such an approach from Biden administration. When they stopped needing us in Afghanistan, when Biden administration, in front of the eyes of the whole world, was just running away from Afghanistan, after that, they reimposed the sanctions on us. So that was probably the peak of negative attitude to Azerbaijan and being very unthankful. And actually that led to serious deterioration in our relationship with the Biden administration, which have not been repaired until the end of this administration. So our relations were in deep crisis. So this symbolic gesture of President Trump has a lot of sense for us. Of course, today Azerbaijan does not need foreign assistance. We do not depend on foreign assistance. Our economy is stable. Our foreign debt is just less than 7% of our GDP. We ourselves became a donor country. So today, 907 amendment has mainly political and symbolic meaning. And this demonstrates that this injustice no longer is around. So this was a very important political gesture on behalf of the president, and along with signing today in his office the creation of a strategic working group to develop a charter on strategic partnership. These two important events happened today. That's why I consider 8th of August a historic day in our interstate relationship, which will have a very positive implication for the whole region. And definitely what happened today between Azerbaijan and Armenia also will be very important for the whole region, for all those who want peace, stability, and prosperity in the Southern Caucasus.
Bugün imzalanan sənədlər, çox önəmli sənədlər imzalandı.
We currently, the third question is being put to President Aliyev.
Sülh müqaviləsi təşəbbüsünü məhz Azərbaycan irəli sürmüşdür.
Yes,
Bu baxımdan bugün imzalanan
sənədlərin əhəmiyyəti necə şəkildə? Bearing in mind that the proposal, the fundamental 5 basic principles of the peace treaty that was initiated today was proposed by Azerbaijan. What is the importance of what has been attained today?
Əlaqələri və təmasları sahəsində bir boşluq yaranmışdı, bir vakuum yaranmışdı.
President Aliyev talking about the vacuum that was created in the context of between Azerbaijan and Armenia. and of course the fundamental and monumental failure of the OSCE Minsk Group, which was effectively disbanded, I mean de facto and de jure disbanded today. And President Aliyev talking about the history of these relations and history of the conflict, and reflecting on the institutional arrangements that were in place back then.
Gelecek bakışlarını ortaya koydu. Yani ki bu boşluk çok devam edebilmez. Yani Azerbaycan ile Ermenistan arasında
effectively, President Aliyev talking about that vacuum that was existing between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and Azerbaijan effectively proposed those fundamental 5 principles.
Onda biz məlum əsas 5 prinsipi ortaya koyduk ve bunun
we're going back to the history of the peace negotiations. We earlier talked about it. The war of 2020 ended, and then for 2021 there was no proper peace process between Azerbaijan and Armenia. There were negotiations mediated by Russia. What President Aliyev talking about, he's talking about the initiation of the peace process. So the introduction of those 5 fundamental principles that now they lie at the heart of what was attained today, and talking about some of the key moments there, about Armenia's objections to some of the principles, and Armenia's desire to add specific provision about Karabakh in the peace treaty, to which Azerbaijan objected. He's extensively explaining the clash between 2 visions, and effectively saying that internal matter of one country cannot be part of peace treaty with another country, because we remember, and I'm now kind of reflecting what President Aliyev just said, we remember that Armenia was insisting on the inclusion of a specific provision related to Karabakh and related to the rights of the Armenian population of Karabakh as part of the peace treaty. And that was one of the key obstacles, because if you're signing a peace deal on the basis of mutual recognition of territorial integrity and sovereignty, they should be, the internal matter of Azerbaijan, and Karabakh was internal matter of Azerbaijan, is internal matter of Azerbaijan, in any manifestation of it, could not have been part of interstate arrangement, and Armenia was insisting on that. And for Armenia, President Aliyev was effectively saying to come to terms with the reality took some considerable time. I remember when those 5 basic principles were proposed, Armenia reacted with 5+1 proposal, and that +1 was about Karabakh. But effectively, the restoration of Azerbaijani sovereignty over Karabakh in September 2023 led to the bilateral nature of the process, and Armenia effectively relinquished that particular demand regarding Karabakh in late 2023. And since then there has been progress regarding the peace process. And of course, President Aliyev talking about extra-treaty obstacles now. He is saying that there are certain things Armenia need to accomplish. And one of them, of course, is Armenia's constitution, which, as you know, and President Aliyev will extensively reflect on that particular point, that provision should be removed from the preamble of the Armenian constitution. There should be a new constitution. Of course, that will require a referendum. And by the way, that will take place probably by late 2026. And President Aliyev now reflecting on the initialing of the peace agreement and saying that the fact that this initialing took place in the White House, in the presence of Donald Trump, it means that we have a firm guarantee that the process will eventually reach its logical conclusion, which is of course signing of the peace agreement and its ratification. And the President Aliyev reflecting on the historic importance of 8th of August 2025. This is a historic moment. I think the process is in many ways irreversible, and what Azerbaijan and Armenia have achieved is absolutely monumental. And the adoption of this joint declaration and its announcement and signing in the United States, in the presence of the US President, with the support of the world's most important country, effectively give rise to the confidence that process is indeed reversible, and that, and the importance of what has been attained is now could be regarded as indeed very colossal. Yeah. President Aliyev repeating what he said during that press conference, and he's repeating that fundamental structure, that joint declaration signed and announced in Washington, the capital of the most important country on earth, in the presence of the president of the most important country of the world. Therefore, we have element of certainty and confidence, and it's a victory of just peace, effectively. I mean, earlier one of the invitees mentioned that President Aliyev won peace, won the war and also won the peace. The question is reflecting on the prerequisites that we discussed extensively, two of them, as you know, and of course, as you know, effectively talking, the question is about two prerequisites, and allow me to hear what the final moment of that question is. Okay, the question is all about the how realistic is it that those two prerequisites, which are actually entailed within the joint declaration signed today, will be fulfilled by Armenia.
Müxtəlif mərhələlərdə Ermənistan cəmiyyətində və hakim dairələrində belə bir
at different stages, at different historic periods, within different historic periods, there was a sense inside Armenian society that some external powers could be very influential.
Bizimsə mövqeyimiz ondan ibarət idi ki, bu cürə qəbul edilməməlidir. Bu birbaşa bizə aidiyyəti olan məsələdir. Bizim ərazi bütövlüyümüzə olan açıq
talking about this particular prerequisite related to the Armenian constitution. Because one of the arguments mentioned, and I'm here effectively building up on the gist of the answer provided by President Aliyev, when you have another country with whom you want to sign a peace deal, having this territorial claim towards your territory, it would not be unfair to say that that matter, although part of that country's internal legislation, still cannot be deemed as its internal matter. Because when your internal matter has some implication for my internal matter, it becomes interstate matter. And therefore, it was quite judicious of Azerbaijan to demand that Armenia should remove that constitutional obstacle, that particular provision laying claim on Azerbaijan's sovereign Karabakh region. And we are talking now about the jure disbandment of AnewZ Minsk Group, because AnewZ Minsk Group, as we heard today a couple of times, was established in 1992. Its fundamental function was to deal with this problem, which was back then called officially Armenia-Azerbaijan Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. But after 2020, this conflict is no longer there. And particularly after September 2023, of course. So although it's de facto defunct, there was a need to disband it de jure. And President Aliyev reflecting on the importance of this joint application, which is enshrined in today's joint declaration, signed and announced today. So that prerequisite is effectively addressed today. I think that joint declaration fundamentally is addressing that particular prerequisite that was outlined and demanded and clarified by Azerbaijan.
Ermənistan tərəfi özü bunu bildirir ki, belə dəyişikliklər edilməlidir. Azərbaycana olan ərazi iddiası oradan çıxarılacaq.
Effectively, what will happen, there will be new Armenian constitution, there will be referendum. Armenia will adopt a new constitution. So let's be very clear about it. Armenia is not removing that particular provision as part of referendum. Armenia adopting a new constitution. And within that new constitution, there will be no preamble referencing 1990 declaration, and there will be no chain of references cumulatively amounting to territorial potential towards Azerbaijan. But President Aliyev effectively saying that that new constitution should have absolutely nothing to do with Azerbaijani territory, should not lay claim on Azerbaijan's sovereign territory. And effectively, some of the unfounded territorial claims towards Azerbaijan must be stopped.
Bu Ermenistan öz işidir.
And effectively saying, President Aliyev saying that this is Armenia's internal matter, but this should happen. Armenia will decide on when this referendum will take place and when this obstacle will be removed. But this is prerequisite, and without that prerequisite being fulfilled, peace treaty, that classical legally binding peace treaty, of course, will not be signed. But parties already initialed this peace treaty, but official signature is contingent upon the fulfillment of those prerequisites.
Here in Washington, signing this peace deal, meeting with President Trump, has introduced you and Azerbaijan for millions of Americans who, for the first time, are being introduced to you in Azerbaijan. They perhaps don't know where Azerbaijan is or have certain misconceptions. Yeah. How would you respond to some of the concerns among some in the American media and in the think tanks, concerns about will Christians be protected in Karabakh? Yeah. And just how important is this Zangezur corridor, not only for Azerbaijan, but for American trade interests as well, given that the Trump trade route is going to be established?
Yeah, you know, for many years Azerbaijan was demonized in the United States media, which President Trump fairly names fake news. And these media outlets like Washington Post, New York Times, Newsweek, and many others, on a regular basis were spreading rumors about Azerbaijan, were attacking us, publishing insulting articles, and actually misleading American public opinion. That was mainly done by representatives of Armenian lobby, the group which today acts against Armenian interests. And today, instead of being happy of what happens today, they are absolutely disappointed because their agenda is absolutely different. They were those who are responsible for occupation because their ideas, their advices, their money, and their influence on different Armenian governments played a destructive role for Armenia itself. If not for them and groups like them, Armenia would have been a much more developed country with a solid independent system, but they just lost time. They lost time occupying our lands, and in the end, they could not keep this occupation forever and actually lost 30 years in their development. And all those rumors and false information about Azerbaijan, for those who know our country, seem absolutely biased because Azerbaijan is one of the countries which is famous for its ethnic and religious diversity. All the religious sites are protected by the state. In Azerbaijan, we never had any, not conflict, even misunderstanding on the basis of ethnic or religious differences. On the contrary, Azerbaijan today is one of the centers of multiculturalism, where representatives of different religious and ethnic groups live as one family. So I think what happened today will be also a good answer to those who still either do not know the reality or deliberately try to create wrong perceptions. And also with respect to land connection between mainland of Azerbaijan and Nakhchivan. You know how many rumors, how many provocations we faced during these last 5 years from leaders of different countries which were spreading rumors that Azerbaijan is planning to attack Armenia. Azerbaijan is planning to take that part of territory by force. And all our messages that this is false information, they did not work because this perception was created, including here in Washington. And the driving force for this Azerbaijanophobia was Biden's administration. And we know it for sure, because in our communications with our European partners, on many occasions they were telling us that this information comes from Biden's team. They were deliberately spreading rumors about Azerbaijan's so-called aggressive intentions. And even during the first months of President Trump's administration, there have been such narratives. They were coming from representatives of the old team, which still stayed in some governmental institutions, and which agenda was influenced either by NGOs like Human Rights Watch, Freedom House, these Azerbaijani haters, or by USAID or Radio Liberty, which President Trump very successfully eliminated and just saved the world from this disaster, which is called USAID. So this was for us a kind of a challenge just to explain that this is wrong. So we had to explain that we don't have these intentions. And what happened today when in joint declaration, which was signed by Armenian Prime Minister and myself and witnessed by President Trump, there is a provision exactly reflecting our position: unimpeded access from main part of Azerbaijan to its Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic. It is written there, and with the sovereignty of Armenia. So what we wanted to have unimpeded access from one part of Azerbaijan to another part of Azerbaijan. And by the way, this was also obligation of Armenia, signed by them on the 10th November 2020. And for 5 years, there was no progress. For 5 years, there was no physical work on the ground. During these years, we almost brought the railroad to Armenian border. It is just maybe less than 1 year we need, or if we work hard, maybe 6 months we need to bring it completely to Armenian border. At the same time, we are starting to rehabilitate the railroad in Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic. So we need this 40+ kilometers railroad in order to connect two parts of Azerbaijan. And not only railroads. We think about electric transmission lines. We think about fiber optic. We think potentially about other energy infrastructure which will absorb energy resources of Azerbaijan and our neighbors across the Caspian in the future. So all this, first of all, totally dismantles all anti-Azerbaijani narratives which have been cultivated by Biden's administration and those political infrastructure which was in their disposal: media, NGOs, USAID, and some corrupt politicians like Menendez, who is today behind bars for corruption, Adam Schiff. I just learned when I arrived that the Maryland prosecutor opened a criminal case against Adam Schiff for mortgage fraud. You know, these people were attacking Azerbaijan on a regular basis. Menendez, Schiff, Peloni, Pelosi, Sherman, Markey, and others. Christopher Smith. All these people, they hate Azerbaijan. I don't know why. Probably because the Armenian lobby pays them for that. And they were a group of serious political figures which were working against Azerbaijan on a regular basis. So today what has been signed between Azerbaijan and Armenia clearly demonstrates our intentions, demonstrates that we want peace, but we want connectivity, we want integration between two parts of our country with a safe passage, which will bring a lot of opportunities for broader region, for Armenia itself. And at one of the meetings with Armenian Prime Minister, I said that Armenia will have a chance to become a transit country. I said, you don't know what to be a transit country, you are not. And you can be transit country only through Azerbaijan. Without Azerbaijan, there is no way to be a transit country. And you will see the benefit of being a transit country. We are trying to be a stronger transit country. We want corridors which are crossing our territory to be more engaged in cargo transportation. This brings money, this brings jobs, this brings political leverage. So these are opportunities which Armenia deprived itself for many years. So this transportation route, Trump route for international peace and prosperity, TRIP abbreviation, will be another historical achievement. But again, as I said before, we should not lose time. We need to engage as soon as possible. United States will be managing this facility. And hopefully there'll be investors who would undertake these important duties to build these connectivity lines to the benefit of all the nations in the region.
Do you see more American investment in energy, given we saw Chris Wright was at that meeting at the historical signing ceremony, of course the MOU signed between SOCAR and Exxon?
Definitely. Yesterday, this MOU on collaboration between Exxon and SOCAR, I'm sure will result in a substantial project. I don't want to say something in advance, but there is a high probability about the big oil discovery in Azerbaijan. As you know, Exxon is a leading energy company of the world and has a great experience in modern technologies, and also has a big experience working in Azerbaijan. Exxon joined our project of Azeri-Chirag-Güneşli in 1994. And signing ceremony yesterday here with the participation of Special Envoy Mr. Witkoff and Deputy Secretary of Energy of the United States and myself actually demonstrates that we believe in the future of this project. Believe me, if we didn't believe, we wouldn't have participated at the signing of MOU. I participate at MOU signings in a very rare cases. I sometimes participate at the signing of the contract, but this is MOU. But we have a lot of factors, technical factors, in our possession to say that that could be a major discovery of hydrocarbons. And due to President Trump's vision and policy today, fossil fuels, which have been discriminated unfairly for the last maybe decade or even more, today fossil fuel is back on track. And our team was here in negotiations with international financial institutions, with Exim Bank of the United States, with potential financing in fossil fuel projects and in transportation, hydrocarbons transportation infrastructure. So energy definitely will continue to be one of the important parts of our cooperation. In our MOU, which we signed with President Trump, energy has a special place. So when we say energy, it is oil, it is gas, potentially renewables. Today, Azerbaijan is supplying natural gas to 10 members of NATO, to 10 American allies. And with respect to pipeline gas delivery, we cover 14 countries. So in that respect, again, about the pipeline gas, Azerbaijan is one of the leading countries in the world. So 10 members of NATO, 10 members of EU, we just recently started to supply natural gas to Syria. So we already entered the region of Middle East, and we'll expand our geography in Europe and also in Middle East. So, but this is only one part of our future agenda. We have a lot of hopes to work closely with the United States on artificial intelligence, on digital transformation. Already initial contacts during my visit here between members of our team and American companies took place, and many more to come. So really, today we are witnessing a historic day from all points of view: security, stability, peace in the Southern Caucasus, economic opportunities, investments, energy security, and many others.
Fascinating. Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what we just saw there was an interview with President Aliyev talking about his declaration of peace with Armenia and talking with President Donald Trump. Thank you so much for joining us. We're now going to talk to Orhan Amashov about what we've just witnessed today, this historical moment. Can you provide a wrap-up of all the key parts that make it to today's event?
Nadia, also the President's answers to the questions were incredibly enlightening, and they were quite extensive, including both answers to the questions posed by our very own Ubey Shapanda. I think what happened today is incredibly monumental, and probably by virtue of being in the presence of an important moment, we're not fully conscious of what has happened. Geopolitical implications will go beyond this region. Azerbaijan and Armenia now, it seems to me and to probably many other people who have been keeping a beady eye on this region, on the Baku-Yerevan dynamics, on that procrastination that used to define the bilateral peace negotiations between these two countries, and pre-bilateral stage as well, we reached a milestone. It's a very important milestone. We have a legal certainty, clarity. That joint declaration commits parts to signing, eventual signing of a peace treaty. As President Aliyev said, by virtue of being signed and announced in Washington in the presence of Donald Trump, we have element of guarantee. It's not a legally binding guarantee, but even stronger than. It's actually, in terms of its real impact, I think it's even stronger than any legally binding guarantee, because the economy, the financial investments, they all are there. What is effectively taking place now, Azerbaijan, by means of achieving everything that it set out to achieve, and managed to formalize the reality on the ground for the benefit of the entire region, including Armenia. Because as I mentioned earlier, and President Aliyev's response to one question specifically mentioned, that occupation, that particular stage wherein these two countries, Baku and Yerevan, were so much focused on dealing with this problem that energy levels, at the potentiality, was directed at peace efforts instead of being directed at some other areas that's so central to the future of these two countries. Now that we have an absolutely fantastic opportunity to focus on the substance of the future of this region, and irreversibility, I believe there, and I think that in the fullness of time, the peace treaty, full comprehensive peace treaty itself will be signed. From Azerbaijani-US bilateral agenda perspective, it begins a completely new stage. President Aliyev and Trump have formulated some form of understanding. Clearly, Trump route for international peace and prosperity is a strong US investment in the region. It's a US footprint in the region. The US, of course, will need to protect its interests there. It's in the Armenian territory. Azerbaijan will achieve its unobstructed access ambition, and also wider in an economic sense of this word. The cooperation between these two countries is so manifold. President Aliyev talked about new gas and new oil fields in the Caspian Sea, about Exxon investing in there, and that memorandum of understanding, which was signed yesterday in the presence of President Aliyev and Special Envoy Witkov, is indeed something incredibly important. And President Aliyev said that he does not like to attend the ceremonies related to memoranda of understanding, but had he not trust in the fulfillment of the ambition ingrained at the heart of that memorandum of understanding, he would not have been present there either. Azerbaijan-US relations, from connectivity to transit to artificial intelligence, will develop from now on at an exponentially increasing rate. This is an important moment. Some stability and prosperity will come to the region. New opportunities will be utilized, and a certain degree of irreversibility, I believe, it has been attained already. So many things have been pointed out during those answers and also during that particular press conference. I think now, after what we have witnessed together collectively, I think that question of formality about the signing does not loom as large as it used to before what we witnessed here. I think that certain point of irreversibility has already been attained, and implications, of course, will follow. And also, you know, we have always said that Azerbaijan and Armenia are not bound to be enemies forever, and having this peace arrangement means that these countries could cooperate in many fields, and we could really build the House of Caucasus, of which we have been talking about on a number of occasions here at AnewZ. And President Aliyev's replies were largely seeing the importance of what has been attained, not just in terms of bilateral Azerbaijan-Armenia structure, scope, but also in the wider scope, talking about Azerbaijan's energy export capabilities, the energy element looming large in bilateral interaction between Washington and Baku, and about one important moment which I would like to underline with particular emphasis. A lot has been lost and wasted in the bilateral interaction between Azerbaijan and Washington. President Aliyev extensively talked about Biden administration. And even President Trump criticized Biden administration for being a complete failure. He said that the US failed miserably during those 4 years. And had he been there from the beginning, things might have developed in a completely different fashion. But the reality is that now such a huge potentiality is present there. If that potentiality is properly utilized, with any form of external provocation being properly and judiciously contained, with common sense prevailing and dominating the course of action maintained both by Azerbaijan and Armenia, the future of this region is going to be absolutely, absolutely brilliant. It's a question of will, it's a question of a propitious context, and in both departments, I think that prospects of future peace in the region look incredibly, incredibly positive.
Thank you so much, Orkan. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for joining me today. You have witnessed an historical moment between the two countries, Armenia and Azerbaijan, signing a declaration of peace. Well, that's the end of our breaking news broadcast. Stay tuned to AnewZ for more updates. Take care.